Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. My name is Mariana, but you can call me Mari, and today I will be discussing my least favorite books of 2024. Alright, so let me preface this video by saying that everybody's tastes in books are different. So maybe I was disappointed by a book that maybe you loved, and that is fine, that is okay. You may love books that I do not like, and I may like books that you do not like, and that's the magic of reading, and that's the magic of having different tastes in different things. So yeah, just wanted to clarify that. And also, I didn't read that many bad books in 2024. I didn't put myself through that because I did the thing you're supposed to do of pick up the books that I actually think I would enjoy. So I don't have that many books to talk about. And the books that I will talk about are more disappointing to me than actually bad objectively. There are some pretty bad books here, but in terms of my perception of how I would rate like a specific book, or how I would say, oh, this is better than this, or to actually put it in the worst category, it has to be really, really bad. And that only happened with one book this year that I would say is objectively bad and just in every way, and I didn't like it at all. So I will talk about that one at the end of this video, but first I'm gonna give some like honorable mentions of kind of disappointing books, or books that I just thought weren't that great. And one of them in particular is quite popular, so yeah, I'm so sorry, but in advance. But yeah, let's begin with my number 6 least favorite book of 2024. I have 6 books yet again. And number 6 is Vivia by Kenneth Lee. I honestly picked up this book because I searched online for vampire books. And though this is kind of like a vampire story, it's so weird. I wouldn't even be able to explain it fully. We follow a girl, her like castle, she lives in a castle. She's like the daughter of a king or a prince. At this point, I can't really remember the details. I just know that like 20% of the beginning of this book, I didn't know what was happening. I couldn't understand what was going on. And then after I kind of was able to follow along in the story, I was just dumbfounded the whole time. So it was a weird reading experience. Like I read it, I didn't DNF it. At some point I did think about DNFing it, but I didn't, so now we're here talking about it. I thought I would like it more than I actually did. The story sounded really, really interesting from like a feminine perspective, because we follow a girl who like expresses her female rage through her sexuality, also because that is the only power she has in the world that we are set in, which is kind of medieval, but like not really. It's just it's weird. So we follow this girl. Her kingdom gets obliterated at the beginning of the novel, and then she is slave to this king, the new king, who's not very nice to her, but also kind of adores her, and she is kind of transformed into this creature. Throughout the novel, we follow her as she's like seeing herself and like understanding how she's able to cope with this newfound power within herself, but also how it affects the people around her. It sounds very interesting, but the actual execution of it is weird. It's just weird. Yeah, the ending is also interesting. I don't know. I just included it here because I gave it 2 stars, just overall. So, yeah, not the worst, not the best, but does fit into the most disappointing reads because I was kind of disappointed by it. Then, ooh, I'm getting weird, like a weird sunlight here. I don't know. Ooh, okay. All right, sunlight. Is that better? Oh, now it's too dark. I didn't think this through, did I? Okay. I I thought I could work with natural light, but it wasn't really doing much for me. So the fifth book in this list is Girl Forgotten by Karen Slaughter. And girl, I have forgotten what this novel was about. I forgot. Right after I finished it, I just forgot about it. So yeah, the title is well put. I have nothing to say. I like Karen Slaughter, usually. I would say it's like 50-50 for me. I'm either going to enjoy her work a lot and find it very riveting and thrilling, or I'm just not gonna like it at all. And this is one of those cases. I feel like as I was reading it, obviously I was invested because it's a thriller, so you're kind of looking to see what happens. I know there was a pregnant girl. Other than that, I don't know. And honestly, I'm too lazy to research what this was about because, again, if it's this forgettable, then I don't think it's worth reading. I think she has so many other really, really good novels that this one just kind of didn't work for me. All right, I'm back. I had to take a little break because the next book I'm going to talk about is a little bit scary. The book itself is not scary, just the fact that it's very popular is kind of scary. Because number 4 in my list is Divine Rivals by Rebecca Ross. And honestly, I don't understand the hype for this one. I understand why people may enjoy it, just objectively, but I don't get the hype. But that's just the me problem, I think, because in this novel we follow 2 people who are competing in the same workplace to get a certain position as a journalist, and they don't like each other, obviously, so it's kind of like an enemies to lovers. But we get a little bit of magic sprinkled in, like a magical realism element, because they are able to communicate with each other through typewriters, and one of them knows who the other person is through the typewriter, but the other one doesn't. So we kind of follow them as they keep on communicating with each other while they interact in the workplace until the girl decides to become a war journalist. So she goes off to the war, and then we get introduced to this whole kind of mythology or lore behind the world that Rebecca Ross is kind of building here, and the reason why this war is happening, and we follow these 2 characters as they kind of follow each other in different ways, and they keep on communicating through the typewriter. And the thing is, I don't like pen pals in novels, especially not romances. And I guess my issue with it is that they know each other in person. Like, if it was just pen pals and they had never seen each other, that would be fine. The moment you introduce the deceitfulness of it, it's kind of icky for me. And this one does it all right. Like, it's not that bad. Like Punk 57, for example, that is a horrible example of that. But in this one, I just kind of wish that element really wasn't there, which I guess it's the whole point of the novel, so that's why I'm saying, like, it's maybe just not for me, and I wasn't the catered reader for this, or the ideal reader. And then also the world building wasn't quite clear. Again, I don't know if it's a me issue, but I didn't quite understand the lore. I didn't quite understand the war or the gods, and I felt like it was building up this huge world that really didn't fit within the story itself. So as we're following these 2 characters and we are starting to learn about the world from the characters' perspectives, because we are not explained to it, which is great because there's a lot of world building, not world dumping. But I kind of wished it was explored a little bit more. And maybe in the sequel or the next books, we will find out more, but I am not inclined to read them. So I will leave my journey with this one here, and it just, yeah. It's here in this list for a reason. It was disappointing. It wasn't bad necessarily. The writing didn't blow me away, but it also wasn't badly written by any means. So yeah, if you enjoyed it, I'm really happy for you. I'm glad. And if you have read the sequel, please do let me know if it's worth continuing and worth reading, because maybe I could be persuaded to read it. I think this is the one book in this list that I may be considering either reading the sequel or looking more into it, because maybe, again, I wasn't quite sure what the author was trying to build here. So yeah. But anyways, moving on. Number 3 in this list is Alone with You in the Ether by Olivia Blake. Another quite popular novel, not as popular as Divine Rivals, I think. But this one, it's kind of like a romance, but I wouldn't call it a romance. And we follow two characters who are extremely just unlikable people. And at the beginning of the novel, the girl is dating this guy, she's living with him and stuff, and then she meets the main love interest, and then we follow him as he is kind of struggling in life, but also is kind of a very reserved and angsty and dark character and whatever. And both of them are just, again, unlikable people, unlikable characters. So I understand the appeal, and I think the writing is really, really good. This is a case of like, I liked the writing. I kind of do like the character exploration, and I did like their backstories and everything. My issue with it is that it is not a romance, in my opinion. Like, I don't like the codependency. There were a lot of toxic traits to their interactions, and both of them are just really toxic individually. But then when you put them together, it's even worse because they kind of become obsessive with each other. And it's just, every time I read things like interactions between them, I would just be like, oh no, oh no, 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 no. Like, this could be seen as very romantic, and like, I'm scared for that because it is not. And I just thought it was very like toxic, and if a book was a red flag, this would be it. You know? So yeah, it wasn't because of the writing, it wasn't because of the characters mostly. I think it was just because of the actual love story that I don't think is a love story. So that's why it's so high up in this list, because if you have seen my other videos and stuff, like, I'm just very against the portrayal or like the romanticization of toxic relationships. And I feel like since this was written with such flowery language, we tend to get lost in the story, and we tend to get lost in the descriptions and the beautiful aspects of it, and it kind of rubs me the wrong way when in reality we're following two characters who just shouldn't be together, in my opinion. But yeah. And then number 2 in this list was also quite disappointing, but I also wasn't expecting much from this book, and I didn't receive much, so I was just like, it's fine, you know. And that is Neon Gods by Katie Roberts, and this is a Persephone and Hades retelling, and we follow a girl who escapes from her family and family expectations and kind of runs off into the arms of Hades, who is like the big baddie and kind of has control of the other side of town. So we have like different organizations, one from this side of the river and then the other side of the river, and then she like runs into his arms, and then he kind of kidnaps her because he wants to use her as leverage to like fight against the other mob boss. I don't know, they're not described as gangs necessarily, but they kind of are. And yeah, to seek control of the other part of the city, like that's kind of what they want. And it is inspired in the Greek gods, so we get mentions of Poseidon and Zeus, and it's just kind of weird. Like, I don't think this is for me, like erotic books based on Greek mythology. Not for me. I like those to be separate. Like, if I'm gonna read an erotic book, it has to be separate from Greek mythological retellings. So I just kind of didn't really like the reading experience, and I was a little confused throughout because I was like, okay, is this it? Like, are we just gonna, you know, see smut the entire time? And it was kind of like that. So if you like spice, and if you like just spice and vibes, I think this may be good. But then again, sprinkling on the Greek retellings was just too much for me. And I do like spice in my books, so that wasn't an issue for me necessarily, but I do need more essence and like romanticism, which, yeah, this one didn't really have. But again, it's still within the disappointing category more than just like bad book, because I thought it was entertaining, and I mean, people may like it, I don't know. I think it is enjoyable if you can, you know, put aside the fact that this is based on Greek mythological characters. But yeah. Alright, and now we are on to the actual worst book, in my opinion, of 2024. for me, which is Wolf Song by T.J. Klune. And honestly, if you've read this, you probably know what I'm about to say. Because this novel, and warning, I will go into spoilers now. I've tried to keep it pretty spoiler free, but now we're going into spoilers because I can't talk about this book without spoiling a big part of the plot. In this book, we follow Ox, who is the main character, who is just a little bit misunderstood by everybody around him. He is a little bit slow and very kind and just a very nice guy, like a very nice person. And he gets introduced to the Bennett family, who lives next door to him. He meets this little kid called Joe, who is the youngest Bennett son, and he and Ox instantly develop this friendship and this bond that kind of grows as the story progresses. The thing is, when I went into this novel, I didn't know this was portrayed as a romance. And this is where it gets kind of tricky for me to talk about, because it deals with underage and predatory behavior from Ox, who is supposed to be this beloved character that you're supposed to really root for and love. And I kind of did, but then the dynamics started changing. And I think it's fine, you know, if a little kid has a little crush, you know, but it just became even worse as the story progressed, and their relationship was very like possessive. And I know that it's because the Bennett are wolves, and they're a pack of wolves that kind of included Ox into their pack, and now he's like part of the family, but even more, he's like part of a pack. And it involves a lot of emotional bonds to the Bennetts in general, but especially to Joe. Joe, when he meets Ox, he gives him this little wolf that signifies like his tie to him. We also learn that Joe had been kidnapped by the bad guy in this novel, and he had been tortured for like 2 years. So he had lost his ability to talk. But then when he meets Ox, he's able to talk again, and he's able to regain, you know, his spirit and his confidence and his love in general. So he opens up to the world because of Ox. And that's great. It's lovely. If it had been that way, if it had been like an older brother dynamic, like I really look up to you, I really love you, but as like a family member, it would have been fine. But the issue is that when Ox meets Joe, Ox is 16 and Joe is like 11 or 10 years old. Something like that. Like the age gap is at least 6 years. And so you can imagine that when the story turns into like a romantic plot, it just rubbed me the wrong way completely. I wasn't expecting it first of all. And when I saw that this was what was going on, it wasn't about their relationship in particular as like two characters. If they had met at the same age, it would have been totally fine. But the problem was that this was a predatory relationship. It's grooming. That's what it is. And I don't like it at all. And I don't understand why. You know why? Why did the author choose to do that? And I wrote that in my review in Goodreads. Like, I don't understand the point. Because I understand the idea of like growing up with somebody and really looking up to that person and getting like a crush because of that. But then the other person actually reciprocating that is just so not okay. Because you are in a position of power and you're in a position where you grew up with this kid who, okay, he's not a kid anymore. By the time they actually get together, he's 17, and then when actually something physical happens, he's 18, right? So it's supposed to make it okay. But it just feels weird, like, you know what I mean? Like, that whole idea of, like, I'm waiting for him to turn 18 so that we can actually fuck. It's like, it's so icky. And the writing was also quite bad. It was like a badly written fan fiction, and Maybe it was inspired by some sort of tropes that you can see in fan fiction. And I guess it's okay for people to like novels like this and enjoy them. But at the same time, I just cannot stop being critical of the choices an author can make when writing a book like this, and when portraying it as like a very beautiful family dynamic and bonding situation, and then pulling out the card of like, oh, but it's also predatory and kind of weird. Here you go, you know? It just makes me angry. I couldn't believe it as I was reading it, and again, you were supposed to root for these two characters. You're supposed to root for their love story. This is a very popular book, I think. Like, it has 4 books and a very good rating in Goodreads. But then you see that, you know, you see the two perspectives. You see people who enjoy it for what it is, and like a romance, and it's very angsty and romantic and whatever, and like very, you know, dominating, and they have this back and forth and it's a lot of tension. But then you get the other part, which is the one I fit into, which is, you know, you get that tension because of the fact that it's problematic. Like, because he grew up with this kid and now he's getting all these like sexual feelings towards him, and it's when he's 17. I can't. And I don't know if it's also because I was a teacher, like a high school teacher, in my 20s, and being 25, I could never look at a kid, an adolescent, a teenager, and think, oh yeah, you know, and especially knowing them since they were young, like 10 years old, and knowing that, you know, you have been such an important part of their recovery and their process. And the thing is, going back to the wolf thingy, the little wolf, apparently that is like a show of love. That's like something you give to your soulmate. And the fact that his parents were okay with that too, like saying, oh, you're 10 years old, but you know what you're doing because you've been through so much trauma. As if trauma equals maturity. As if trauma means that you can go into a relationship with somebody who is much older than you, like 6 years older than you, whatever, you know? Oh, that's fine. When it is not, in my opinion. And I'm getting very riled up about this because I just find it so, icky. So that's why when I said that there was one book in particular this year that I consider to be the worst, it is this one. And there have been other books that I've read this year that have had worse writing, worse characters, worse world building. Like, the world building here is very interesting. If it had been about the werewolves and the family dynamics and bonding between them and stuff, that would have been fine. But the moment you introduce a romance that is this type of romance, I am not into it at all. And that is why I ended up giving it 1 star. This is my only 1 star of 2024. Because the same way I only give out a few 5 stars, I really struggle when giving a book 1 star. Because it really has to deserve it. And this one does. Because it infuriates me. I've read a lot of the Goodreads reviews praising this book. And at some point I just have to be very critical about it, and that's where this comes in. But that's why I consider it to be the worst book of 2024, and the other ones are just kind of disappointing, but they at least don't have this romance. And I mean, going back to what I said at the beginning of this video, everybody's taste is different, so obviously if you enjoy any of these novels and if you feel very strongly about them, I would love to hear your thoughts. And if you do agree with me also, I would love to hear your perspectives on what I've talked about, especially regarding the last book that I mentioned. And then I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope this wasn't too negative, but I do enjoy making these types of videos where I can be very critical about either, you know, the thematics of a book or analyzing it from different perspectives. That's kind of what I do for a living, so that's kind of what I like. So yeah, take care of yourself, and I will see you soon with another video soon. Bye bye.